Coming to you from the road in Norco, California this week. This is GovLove, a podcast about local government, brought to you by engaging local government leaders. I'm Ben Kittelson, Senior Consultant at Tellus and GovLove co-host. We've got a great episode for you today. We're talking Parkland, local government careers, with a great guest. But first, the best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. Engaging local government leaders is a professional association engaging the brightest minds in local government. And the best way to support GovLove is to become a member. So if you like this podcast, go join ELGL. Now, let me introduce today's guest. Jackie Wehmeyer is the Senior Director of Strategy and Intergovernmental Affairs at the City of Parkland, Florida, a position she's been in since March 2022. And prior to taking on her current role, she served as Human Resources Director in Parkland, and she was also Human Resources Director in the city of Margate, Town of Jupiter, and the city of Coconut Creek, all in southern Florida. So with that, Jackie, welcome to GovLove. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
Cool. So close listeners to the podcast will know we do a lightning round to get to know our guests a little better. So my first question for you, what was the first album that you bought?
Okay, so I'll show my age a little bit here. It's not the first album that I bought. I can't remember that one, but the first album that I owned was as a child, and it was the soundtrack from Grease. And the thing that I remember about that is that at some point playing around, I dropped the record, it cracked on the edge. So every time I played Rock and Roll's Here to Stay, it skipped and I had to kind of rearrange it a little bit. So that's my first album that I owned and kind of destroyed.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. The Spotify era, you kind of miss on the little quirks of the cassette tape would always mess up here, or the skip on the record.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Then my next lightning question for you. What's the last thing, movie, TV show you watched?
So last night on Netflix, we caught American Manhunt, the Boston Marathon bombings. There's just so many things out there, I guess, in U.S. history that have kind of shaped the way that we are today. And I've got some teenagers at home. They are freshmen in high school, and we kind of like pulling up these documentaries about things that have happened in history and watch them and kind of talk about them a little bit. So I'm really happy that they're interested in those kinds of things. Not necessarily the best things that have happened in our history, but definitely things that are important to know about.
Man, yeah, and that's not that long ago. So to call it history is real. Makes me feel old.
Yeah.
But, all right, then my next lightning question for you. What book are you reading?
I haven't cracked it open yet, but it's sitting there waiting for me to start. And that is a book by Andrew McCarthy called Brat: An 80s Story. I am a big Brat Pack nut. Growing up in the 80s, I've seen all of those Brat Pack movies 10 million times. So I've read a few of the biographies and autobiographies of some of the Brat Packers, and they're pretty interesting. So I can't wait to get into that one.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to reveal my ignorance, but for the uninitiated, what is the Brat Pack?
So the Brat Pack are these actors and actresses from the 80s that were in a lot of the movies that were pretty iconic for the time. So 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, those type of movies. And so there's a group of probably about 6 or 8 of those actors and actresses that they deemed the Brat Pack. Not something they like to be called, but something where people knew who they were.
Cool. Very cool. Awesome. And then my last lightning question for you. Where do you go for inspiration?
Well, I know a lot of people on your podcast talk about the beautiful places in their city that they like to go for inspiration, and Parkland is not any different. I think, although we have beautiful parks here, we've got this one main road, Holmberg Road, that goes east-west through our city, and it's so green, and it's lined by these huge oak trees, and goes right past City Hall, goes right by my neighborhood. And if I take a jog down Holmberg Road and circle around by the Equestrian Center, and It's quiet, it's beautiful, it's green. That's a great source of inspiration for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's one thing. Moving to Florida, the live oaks and like, they are beautiful and like so cool to see. Yeah,
They are. There's much more than palm trees here in Florida
yeah, exactly,
to have.
exactly. Cool. So, one of my favorite things to ask is people's paths into local government. So, can you talk about a little about your kind of path into local government and the role you're in today?
Sure. So when I started my career after college, my first job was not in local government. My first job was at a hospital. I'd gone to school in at USF in Tampa and moved down to Naples. Anybody who's been to Naples knows it's a beautiful place on the west coast of Florida, but it's not very big. Getting out of college, I needed a job right away. And my degree had been in journalism.
Hmm.
So there was one local paper there, and of course they didn't have any openings right away. Keep my name on a list. I need to get moving in my career. So I went to the local largest employer, which was the hospital,
Hmm.
and said I need something temporary. So they said, well, it looks like you've got a degree, and we need a secretary in human resources. I had no idea what human resources was, but it was a great job. I learned a lot, and I thought HR was pretty neat at the time. So then I had about a year and a half into that position and needed to move over to the east coast of Florida.
Hmm.
So I had an ad there for a human resources position, entry level at the city of Boca Raton. And I didn't know much about working for a municipality, of course, but I needed that job in human resources. I had that little bit of experience, so I went there, and not only did I develop that real love for human resources, but getting to work with so many different employees in local government was just the best thing for me. We had people in police and fire and utilities and finance and development, and they were all there for that one common thing of making life easier for our residents and making the city a great place to live in. And that was kind of exciting for me. It gave me like a real good sense of purpose. And
Yeah.
then in human resources, I was kind of the person who helped make things better for the people who are making things better for our residents.
Mm.
That really that was something that was exciting for me, and my the whole rest of my career has all been in local government. It's all been for
Yeah.
municipalities.
Yeah. No, that's inspiring. Yeah, because you're not alone in kind of like not knowing about local government and then finding that connection um, to that bigger picture and that purpose. I'm curious how is like kind of your role or I know you're not in HR right now, but over the course of your career, how has kind of HR changed as kind of being part of that, supporting the people that create the community that do the work in the communities? Like how has that kind of role of human resources maybe changed over the course of your career?
Oh gosh. So since I have been in HR and local government for about 30 years now, it's HR has it used to be more transactional. HR used to
Yeah.
be the people who kept the files and kept the rules and that kind of thing. But HR has become more transformational now. So it's
Hmm.
really more about the people. You need to really understand what your employees need, what motivates them. You need to be kind of a little bit more part of their life than the person who collects a form from them.
Mm.
It kind of that whole "it takes a village" thing is important. It's not incumbent on HR individually or supervisors and leaders individually to care for their employees and to make sure that they have everything that they need. And everything they need is not just a physical tool. It's sometimes those mental and emotional tools. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that HR has gone through, is that and
Mm.
becoming more of a seat at the table in an organization. When you understand the people, you understand how operations can be run a little bit better too. So
Oh,
once
interesting.
you kind of show that your organization needs somebody who can kind of span the entire organization. You don't have to be a specialist or understand specific operations to understand the people.
Mm.
You might be able to have some good input on how operations can run better as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I love that transactional transformational. That's I like that's a really cool. Um, just I'm curious. Since again, I think HR is interesting and like one of those areas where like you can have it can make or break an organization, right? Where if you're being a transformational HR function, that can really help
Mhm.
an organization take the next step. And if you're not, maybe there's some problems there. So I'm curious, how have you kind of helped, or again over your career, like either your department or you help understand kind of like what are those employee needs or what are those things that allow you to kind of understand what the employees are going through.
Well, I think the big obvious thing would be to ask them, and I don't
Mm,
think we don't have enough of those conversations with our
mhm,
employees to actually sit down and say, what do you need? But first, they have to trust you. You need to give employees enough opportunity to see you as a human being and to interact with you enough to see that you can follow through on things with them and that
mhm,
you can remember the things that are important to them. Ask them about their families, ask them about their jobs. But I think too many times employees don't have conversations with their supervisors or with HR enough.
mm,
And that's how you kind of get to know what they need. So I think when we've gone through things like COVID, that's when people are really a lot more human. Is they may with that trust be able to open up to you a little bit more and say, you know what, this is what I need is I need, let's say, more time to be home with my kids since they're not physically in school.
yeah.
I've got an issue with that. So if they tell you what the problem is and maybe even come to you with solutions, then you
Mm,
can do something that's not only going to help their lives, but maybe the lives of their coworkers. So for instance, during COVID, we allowed employees to still maintain full-time status, full-time benefits and everything, but reduce their work hours down. Instead of 40 hours a week, maybe it's 30 hours a week,
hmm,
just so that we can maintain operations. They can continue to care for their families. And then at that point, they understand how much an organization, cares for them and sees their value. So I
wow.
think those are the things that, as leaders, we need to do. Have more of those conversations with employees. Don't be afraid to ask them what they need. You may not always be able to give it to them,
Mm,
but at least they know that you care enough to try and solve an issue.
yeah, you care enough to ask and you care enough to
Yeah,
listen and to
yeah.
try and solve it. Yeah. How does that differ for like office employees versus like folks? Because like a big chunk of an organization in local government is like people that are in the field, picking up trash, maintaining
Oh, yeah.
parks, repairing water and sewer mains. Like, how does that change, or for how do you engage with that group versus maybe the folks that are like HR professionals in an office most of the time and probably have similar, maybe
Yeah,
easier to understand their kind of needs.
yeah, you have to actually be where they are,
Yeah.
and you need to, again, kind of give them that opportunity to get to know you as a person, and get them to understand that you're trustworthy.
Mm,
So, one thing here as a small employer in Parkland, our biggest department is actually Public Works,
yeah.
and if anybody coming through Parkland will see how beautiful our city looks, and that's because we've got people who work in public works that care about how it looks.
Mhm,
So if you want to kind of know what they are needing, you go to them at lunchtime.
mm,
Go sit in the break room with them. Go sit and eat lunch. And we have, because we're a smaller employer, we have birthday celebrations every month. So we'll not only have one here in City Hall, but we'll have one in Public Works. And we'll go have some kind of treat, some kind of food, and just kind of sit and chat and get to know them a little bit. But if you can make sure that they understand that you're there, you have that open door, you can connect with them.
mm.
Um, and cities that I've worked in before, if it's police department, go
Mhm.
to a morning briefing. If it's the fire department, go to the firehouse when they're maybe sitting down and relaxing, and just go chat with them, and be with them where they are, and not expect them to always come to an office.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well, I appreciate the little tangent into HR. What you just talked a little bit about was a good transition to my next question for you. For our listeners that haven't maybe been to Parkland before, can you give us a sense a little bit about the city and kind of just tell us a little bit about Parkland?
Sure. So Parkland is a city of about 34,000 residents. We're located in the northwest corner of Broward County. So for those who aren't familiar with Southeast Florida, Broward County is probably where you'd know Fort Lauderdale or
Mm,
Hollywood. And being at the northern part of the county, we're kind of in between Boca Raton and Fort Lauderdale, but we're west. So
mm,
we are right on the edge of the Everglades. You
mhm.
can't build any further west than where we are now. We just celebrated our 60th birthday,
Oh
so
wow!
city's been
Congrats.
incorporated for just 60 years. But it started out being kind of more of a farming, or like a community where people wanted some land and they just wanted it to
Mm,
be quiet. And so as time has gone on, it's developed and developed, and we still actually are one of the rarer areas here that has some more building going on, but we will be built out in just a couple of years. So it's got a mix of people with some land, and more, have some horses and animals, but we've also got people in some new luxury homes that are more on the modern side.
mm,
So Parkland it's green. It's got beautiful parks. We've got this mix of new and old. Think about things like farmers markets. We've got a beautiful farmers market that we do during season, an equestrian center. So it's kind of a smaller community
mm.
without a whole lot of commercial. Um, but it's one of those hidden gems here in South Florida.
Awesome. Well, and I bet to your to, being on the edge of the Everglades is probably leads to some interesting discoveries for the public works guys you were referencing. So,
Oh, absolutely. And people who move here don't understand, we're kind of on the animals' land.
yeah,
So when they discover that they've got some iguanas, or alligators, or coyote, or a bobcat, or something that appears, that we've kind of displaced them. So don't
yeah,
be surprised.
yeah. Um, well, and Parkland was named kind of one of ELGL's best places to work, and back in 2021. And we've already kind of touched on a little bit when we're talking about HR. But is there anything you'd kind of add around like what the city focuses on to kind of make it a great place to work, and kind of make it a place that employees want to stay at and come to?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. We really do need to continue to do that, is to make it a place that people want to come to and stay for their career. But yeah, Parkland is we've only got about 150 employees. We contract out things like law enforcement and fire. We don't have utilities, and so for our public works department, which is about 55 people, that's our largest department. It's the smallest place I've ever worked.
Hmm.
But a lot of times people say that their workplace is like a family, but being this small, we really are.
Mm,
Um, but working here in Parkland is amazing, because we do make sure that we have all of those opportunities for employees to get to know each other and see each other. You may not get to see everybody every day because everybody isn't right here in City Hall, but there's a lot of people who have been here for a while, and they just enjoy each other. So it really is like a family environment with employee events and get-togethers. We've got we've got a leadership here that really truly cares, and they
mm,
like having fun.
yeah.
Um, and I got to tell you, when I was interviewed for the HR director position here, and I was told about what a small employer it was and everything, I was told that, I would probably get an opportunity to do things that are outside of my wheelhouse
Yeah.
because you just got to get things done.
Hmm.
And I think that's one thing that Parkland is good about is allowing people to grow and allowing people to do things that are different. Um, we have to depend on each other a lot more,
Hmm.
but that's a good thing. People here aren't afraid to try new things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it gives everybody a whole lot of a good experience and a lot of people you can turn to for help.
Yeah.
And we really truly have a group here that's very cohesive and wants to get things done together.
That's very cool. And that's one of the benefits of being in a small organization, right? Is that you get to kind of see things that outside of your normal job duties, or it's that other duties as assigned there. It's a much larger maybe chunk of your day to day than in a place where you can kind of
Absolutely
specialize
it
more.
is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's a good transition to kind of your current role. So what is a senior director of strategy and intergovernmental affairs? Like what's kind of what are you responsible for? What are some of the things that take up your day to day in that role?
So, yeah, just actually remembering that full title is that took a while, and I've still sometimes go to events and things where people are trying to introduce me, and they're just like, just introduce yourself because we
Yeah.
can't remember what you are. Um, I like to say that in HR, what you do is you kind of preserve and nurture your internal relationships. And in
Hmm.
this position, you're kind of doing the same, but with the city's external relationships.
Hmm.
So I've got a relationship with all of our schools here in South Florida. We don't have municipal schools. Everything's run by the county. So even though we don't have control over them, we still need to have a relationship with them to make sure that we get things done together. I've got relationships with the the Chamber of Commerce, with the schools, with other government agencies. Um, I have a key role in strategic planning.
Hmm.
I chair our community advisory board, run our youth ambassador program, review our budget performance measures. It's really all of the things that the city manager's office has that are special projects.
Hmm.
So I work closely with the city manager and the assistant city manager just to make sure that we take care of these things, but we also maintain good relationships with everyone so that we can always reach out for help or to give help where it's needed.
Hmm. So what does that kind of, I don't know, like practically look like? Are you like going out and meeting with principals and like trying to reach out to neighboring cities, or like do you have like a way of being like this is how frequently I need to engage with these folks, or are there certain issues that you're kind of focused on?
Well, sure. You just mentioned schools.
Mhm.
School principals, we have a quarterly meeting where I just have lunch with all of the principals of the schools that are here in Parkland, and not just the public schools, but we've got a charter school and
Mhm.
we've got a Catholic school here too. Meet with them, find out what's going on, how we can be involved, how we can help, besides just regular ongoing communications with them. Recently, we had um, the school board looking at the boundaries of our local high school.
Mhm.
So, our local high school has residents from Parkland and Coral Springs that attend it, but it's been overcrowded for quite a few years. So, when the school board needed to go through a process of maybe adjusting the boundaries to the school, it's something that we needed to get our residents involved in. That's one of those things where I was sort of involved in making sure that we communicate with our residents, we make sure that they go through the processes they need to go with the school board and
Mhm.
keep our commission informed. So kind of a little bit of the communication glue with some of those external organizations.
Yeah, yeah. So it's an interesting kind of, not hodgepodge, but a collection of special projects and fun engagement outside of the community. What, or outside of the organization? Like what made you want to kind of switch from, you were in HR for most of your career to this kind of new, much different role?
That's really an opportunity that was given to me by my city manager.
Mhm.
So as I'd said before, we're small. We kind of all get involved in different things. So when I'd been here, I'd say about a year and a half, 2 years, our library director retired.
Hmm.
And the city manager said, at least in the interim, would you like to act as the library director? I said, sure, great. That'd be a wonderful opportunity. Learn some new
Yeah.
things, work with a great group of people. Um, so at some point, things are going really well because the team over in the library they do a great job, and they just really needed a director, somebody there to kind of advocate for them and help them with the bigger level things. So she asked me if I wanted to keep that permanently, be director of human resources and the library. And same thing, I thought, sure, this is great. I'm learning things, and she trusts me, and
Yeah.
that's a wonderful thing. And then a little while after that, there was an employee who had a similar role to the one I'm working in now, who had left,
Hmm.
and city manager asked me if I could take on a couple of those duties. And same thing, I'd love to do that. I'd love to learn something new. And took on a couple more. And then at one point, she said, I think if you'd like to be in this position permanently, if you want to, would you like to?
Hmm.
And and I had a wonderful second in command in HR that we knew could easily move up into the role of HR director. So that's kind of how that evolved. But
Yeah.
it was that thing where, at some point in your career, I've heard people say, why don't you just coast? Like you're a director of human resources. Why don't you just kind of sit back, and you don't have to do a whole lot of work. You don't have to really learn anything else except keep up with current trends. Why don't you just coast? And but I'm not like that. I like learning new things. And when you like learning new things and you've got a leader that trusts you
Mm.
and will give you that opportunity, then that's awesome. It's the way that you can continue to stay curious and kind of grow yourself. And I'm so grateful that she gave me that opportunity.
Yeah. That's awesome that you got to try it out almost before committing
Yeah,
to see if you liked it.
yeah, absolutely.
So library director, that's awesome. That's I'm not qualified at all, but that just seems like an awesome job. So
It
what
is,
was that?
and I'm still library director
Oh, you
too,
are.
and as part of this role.
So what was that like? Kind of taking over that new, because that's a pretty core, especially for like a community service and core function of local government. Like, how did you come in and be like, how'd you learn something like a new function like that, and then come in and win people over for like not being a library director before?
Well, I think the first thing was really just to get I knew the team over there because being HR director, you kind of get to know who everybody is.
Yeah.
But I know when I first went over there and had a meeting, one of the employees said, "Well, are you going to actually come over here and sit at the circulation desk and help patrons?" And I said, "Well, sure I will." And I think he was a little taken aback, so I made sure that I asked the library manager, I said, I would like to sit and I want to train with him.
Mhm.
He knows what he's doing, and I want to show him that, I'm right there with him. So I did. I went and I trained over there on how to check out books and, how to do what they were doing at the desk. It's really just observing and being with people and asking them questions.
Mm.
Why do you like working here? What kinds of things do you see that are issues? What can we do that's better for our residents?
Mm.
And they're a great group of people, and they're creative, and they produce amazing programs for our residents. And not every city in this area has a library. Usually, that's a more of a county function. There's only a few cities in this area that have individual libraries. So it's a real special place, and I'm just fortunate to get to work with these people.
That's very cool. Awesome. Um, so if anybody is in Parkland, they should go to the library and then just they can see what you're over.
Come
That's
on
awesome.
by.
So yeah. So I'm curious, are there any like particular issue areas like I don't know, like resilience or kind of emergency response even that are you're engaging with nearby local governments, nearby cities on?
Well, I don't know when you talk resilience or
Mm.
emergency management. I mean, you live in Florida, so you know that this is a hurricane magnet.
Oh yeah.
We always just have to be on our game for those things, and that's where it's important that we've got great partners with the Broward Sheriff's Office that we use for
Mhm.
law enforcement, and the Coral Springs Parkland Fire Department for our fire rescue. Is to just keep in constant communication with them. As a matter of fact, even though they're vendors per se and
Mm.
they're not city employees, we have fire chief and our our captain that come to our director meetings just as if they are city employees.
Oh
So
cool.
so it's just important to keep planning, keep, sharpening your tools, making sure that you're preparing for things that you might not expect. And anybody who's been paying attention to the news and heard about last week's rainstorm that they had in Fort
Hmm.
Lauderdale, and
Yeah.
how Fort Lauderdale and Hollywood were completely underwater, and there's just so much damage there. That could happen to any of us at any time. So
Yeah.
so maintaining those relationships with people and is important.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a good point around like police and fire. If that's being provided by external organizations, like you have to maintain those relationships. So having kind of a role like yours, where but I assume that's kind of your your job to like keep in touch with them and make sure like everybody's on the same page and all that good stuff.
Yeah, but like I said, they're absolutely a part of our team, so we
Hmm.
don't think of them any differently.
Yeah.
They're like department directors like anyone else. So when they're part of kind of our employee family, it's easy. It's
Yeah.
not something that we have to go out of our way to do.
Yeah. Was there anything about kind of your new role? And I know you've been, I think it's only been about a year that you've been in it, but your new role that's surprised you or you didn't expect when you took it on full time.
Wow, something I didn't expect. I think I think one thing is that for trying to reach out to other organizations, other bigger organizations like the county or the school board, that in those larger organizations, there tends to be, at least what it seems, is a lot of turnover. So
Mm,
for as much as you think you've got the right person to talk to, you find out tomorrow it's not the right person, and you've
mm,
always got that change. So that's I think what was surprising to me is that sometimes you've got a good relationship with a person or a group, and they're not there anymore, and you've got
mm,
to reestablish who is the right person. Let me reach out to them. Let me find out who the right person is, because you know we found that a lot with the schools, is that on the school board staff, you've always got new people, and we just had a really big turnover for the school board itself. A
mm,
majority of the members are new,
mm.
so so it's just surprising to me that dealing with a smaller organization, you always know who it is, and you may not always know who you need to reach out to and how.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Like, yeah, you almost have to learn the organization and not just like the one point of contact. You have to figure out where they sit so you can know who to go to when they're gone.
Hmm.
Interesting. Cool. Um, and then so hmm, one so as I was kind of prepping for this, I saw just kind of some coverage about Parkland, and you guys bought I think it's a land that used to be a golf course, and kind of prepping
Yeah.
to use it for something else. So I'm just curious if you wanted to talk about that project at all, or if there's anything you kind of it seemed like a unique maybe opportunity for a city to like figure out how to redevelop like a big patch of land that's you probably don't often get like that much land that's ready for redevelopment in a
Right.
place like Parkland. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you don't. And you're exactly right. It is a unique opportunity. So, golf courses in Parkland's not different than other places in the U.S. where golf courses are kind of going out, phasing out.
Mm-hmm.
So, so this golf course is in the middle of Heron Bay, which is really a large a large residential community that's very farther west. And so the golf course is up for sale, and one of our local utilities purchased it, and
Mm.
they needed it for actually some utility needs, but it was an investment for them, and they started putting something out for an RFP to for it to be developed. And
Mhm.
the residents in Heron Bay surrounding this area, number one, it was difficult for them to think, wow, what's going to be in my backyard now because I
Yeah.
purchased a home knowing it was going to be on a golf course. Um, they were very nervous about what could possibly be built in their backyard, and the utility made them nervous as to
Mhm.
what they were looking at, and they had some proposals from some developers that didn't really understand Parkland, didn't understand what we
Mm.
look like, what we feel like, what we are. So the city asked the utility, "Can we purchase this from you instead of selling it to the developer?" And and they
Huh.
did. They sold it to us. And you know, when our residents reached out to us and said, "What can you do to help us, maintain Parkland's character?" Um, that was the one thing that we could do. You can
Mm.
only control so many things through, land use and that kind of thing. You can control maybe how many houses there are per acre, but you can't control what they look like. You can
Mm.
control how much commercial, but you can't control what's in there or whether it's going to work. So the city decided to kind of say that the best way that we could help assure our residents that what's put there is something that's very Parkland like is to control it ourselves.
Mm.
So right now there's kind of two phases of it. There's a dog leg where there's 21 acres that we've said, you know what, it's right in the middle of homes, so we'll sell that off as residential
Mm.
to the right developer. But that way we can control who the developer is, what those homes look like, and all of that. And then the second phase later on will be the remaining 33 acres that we've said will be a commercial town center.
Oh wow.
So not just a mall or throwing anything commercial there, but to make it a successful town center, something where our residents want to go, maybe do a little shopping, but more like hanging out and
Mm.
having a dinner with your family. Maybe do the city will have some area to do some programming,
Mhm.
but that way, it helped our residents, feel good that there was something that the government could do for them, and that's not something we've done before. I mean, right
Yeah.
now we're delving into a different territory, so we've brought on people to help us understand what we can and can't do, and we're taking our time to make sure that our commission and our residents take a look at the possibilities, and we get everybody on the same page. But that's something that's really, really exciting to us. And it just goes to show you, you never know what opportunities will come up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just have to keep yourself open to it and be creative.
Yeah, I think and we'll talk about another one of your articles you wrote for Eel Jail, but I think you wrote about like it's an opportunity to be bold for Parkland, right? Was this little this opportunity and like being open to that, and that's really good advice.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like that risk assessment that you have to do,
Yeah.
Sure, you don't want to just dive into something blindly,
Mhm.
but if you can look at it and say, you know what, this may be not easy. It
Mhm.
may not be something we know everything about, but we can get there.
Yeah.
And continuing to have the voice of your residents, being heard, and um, that's important to making sure that you can develop as a community that's not only sustainable, but it's flexible enough, that you can meet the needs of your community. As we've grown, our community's changed a little bit,
Yeah.
so we need to be flexible and open to that.
Yeah. So I assume there must be a community engagement component to this project. What's that been like?
We haven't really gotten to much of that point yet. A lot
Mm.
of the community engagement was at the very beginning when we were deciding whether or not we were
Whether to
going to
do it.
purchase this.
Mm.
And so we definitely heard from the residents at that point. And I think you'll have a certain group of people who will say, well, why don't you just keep it all green?
Yeah.
Just keep it like a golf course. And you can't do that. So that's where you talk to them about balance.
Mm,
And I think once they've seen some ideas, that we've had people in the development field who have come and done some workshops with our commission, and our residents have seen what types of things you can do
mm,
and what things you shouldn't do. They've been more open to the possibilities of it. But as we go through, we'll ensure that, when our commission has some communication and some presentations from possible developers and other people we'll be working with to take a look at what the town center concept looks like. It's really important that we open all of that to our residents. Not only is transparency important, but their feedback.
yeah.
That's important all along the way.
Yeah. Make sure to address kind of what they're looking for out of that is, yeah.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, you wrote a recent article for the Yields Your website on our Morning Buzz series on, I got a kick out of this, but on Mark McGrath calling you old. So, so what made you want to write that article on that topic?
Oh gosh, that was awesome. So yeah, the band Sugar Ray, they're amazing. We actually had them for our 60th anniversary celebration called Parkland Day. It's something we hadn't done in quite a long time, is to have a big celebration like that. So we were so glad that we could get them to come and play the end of the evening at our amphitheater. So the nice thing was we got to meet them, a certain group of us employees, meet them ahead of time, and they're just very, very real people, very cool. So watching the show, Mark McGrath just kept making these very self-deprecating jokes about how old he and the band were and how
Mm,
long he's been doing this. And then he said, yeah, I've been doing this for, over 30 years. And I thought to myself, I think I just realized that I hit my 30-year mark working in local government,
yeah.
and I don't feel like I'm old. So I Google it and I thought, oh my God, he's the exact same age I am. So he kept calling himself old, and I'm definitely not feeling old, but I felt much older, at that moment.
Yeah.
But I kept thinking about, we've got employees that have, and I wouldn't say old, but people who are tenured, um,
Hmm.
people that we depend on all the time, that they say, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. And then they start getting ready to retire. And
Mm,
what are we going to do? There's a lot of knowledge there, not just
yeah.
about what they do, but about the city specifically. Um, there's certain little things about the way that let's say a street was built, or an issue that's happened in the past, that unless that person passes it along, we don't know.
Mm,
And so it made me think about how we've got to not only, you don't just replace a person,
mm,
you've got to bring in people, um, new ideas and fresh ideas, and you've got to continue to listen to those and implement those. But you've got to kind of meld that with all of your institutional knowledge,
mm,
and maybe some of the reasons we have or haven't done things in the past, and put that all together. And that's it's getting tougher and tougher. Everybody knows how difficult it is to fill positions, but as our people begin to retire, there's certain areas that it's really difficult to recruit for. And so,
yeah.
if we internally can continue to communicate with our tenured employees and get knowledge from them, and maybe
Mm,
match them up with other employees who might be moving up into those roles, we can be a little bit more prepared. Maybe telling somebody, hey, look, I can't guarantee you a promotion if somebody moves on, but I'm going to prepare
mhm,
you for it. I'm going to give you all the knowledge that I can. Um, and it's how you treat those people. You had alluded earlier in this conversation to being a place people wanted to be. And
yeah.
I think we need to not only plan ahead, but we need to continue to make our organizations an employer of choice. So
Mm,
you're not only bringing in people and helping people see why they want to work for the city of Parkland. But having employees realize why they want to stay here. You need to, as I said, people move on. You need to get people in, but you need to keep the people that you have as long as you can and as long as they want to be here. And if they want to be here, that that's why anybody works
Yeah.
somebody in a certain places. They want to be there. They want to be there with the people, and they see the value. So keep people as long as you can, but prepare for when
Mhm.
they're not going to be here anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a really good point. Like preparing for those folks to leave and capturing that knowledge. I think that I'm sure there's lots of folks listening that are dealing with similar issues. How do you kind of
Yeah.
institutionalize or programize or actually practically make that happen? Like, or how have you kind of seen that be successful? Of like, hey, this person's been in our public works department for 30 years, and he knows where all the not literal bodies, but where the things are buried.
Right.
And so how do you kind
Exactly.
of how do you go about capturing what you don't know, and but he knows, and like, or
Yeah.
just like how do you kind of make this more practical and like actually like implement that? Because it's one thing to be like we want to capture this knowledge, it's another to be like how do you capture the knowledge that you don't know about?
Yeah, it's sometimes it's difficult. I've heard people talk about having very clear succession planning, and it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think supervisors, when they see that you've got employees that are going to be, looking to leave in a certain number of years, not right as they're going to leave, but earlier than that, is to start, maybe pairing them up with people and having people shadow them, and you kind of have to walk the walk with them, to see, hey, look, they're talking to this resident over here about clearing a storm drain, let's say, and they're talking to them about the issues they had in the past with this street, and why it is the way it is. You need to listen to those things. You need
Mm,
to take note of those things, and maybe even put them to paper at some place so that you can use that later on. But I
mm,
think it's really getting people involved with them, and seeing their daily work. We may not be able to do that all the time because you need to keep
yeah.
everything going, but your leaders need to spend more time with them, and they need to put them together with other employees. And as I've said before, give people an opportunity. If you ask people, do you want to learn something different, do you want to know how to move to the same level, to the next level in
Mhm.
either the same or a different vocation, let me pair you up with this person, let me have you spend
Mm,
time with this person, because they know what's going on. And I think you strengthen relationships and trust there as well.
yeah, yeah. No, that's really well said. And you mentioned it in the article. I think you touched on it a little bit in your first answer, but that balancing, I really like the point about balancing new ideas with institutional knowledge. And I think it's something I've seen a lot in my current day job around where we come into local governments all over the country and try to solve problems, and but you also have to learn kind of what are the unique things that are going on in this community and this organization that maybe mean that the thing that works somewhere else isn't going to work here, or you have to do it a
Right.
different way. And so it's like knowing that institutional
Right.
knowledge kind of helps you figure out how to
Mhm.
implement the new idea in Parkland versus maybe how it would be done
Mhm.
in another city.
Right, or maybe it's even timing. Sometimes an
Yeah,
idea, is worth doing, or you can do it, but maybe it didn't work 5 years ago, it'll work now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you know why it didn't work 5 years ago, especially.
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. So we'll be sure to link to that article in the kind of write up of today's episode. But before we kind of wrap up, what's next? What are you working on that our listeners should look out for? Is there anything that's coming um, down the pike in the next 6 months or a year that you're excited about?
Wow. Well, I just very short term. I've got another morning buzz, I think, that's coming out today.
Oh,
And
nice.
I've one thing that for people who are thinking about getting more involved with ELGL, it's been such a great opportunity to be able to write morning buzz, and
Mhm.
to just get to read everything that everybody's working on, and get that inspiration from others. But I'm going to be talking about lying in the workplace. So, Just so you
Mm.
know, I have not lied at all during this interview. I'm looking forward to doing more of that work. But yeah, here in Parkland, the golf course is definitely a big thing that we are working on. We've got our second youth ambassador program group that will be coming through. We picked some high school students to learn about local government, and we are just wrapping up the first year. We'll be starting the second year coming up soon. So we've got some exciting things going on here, but here's the thing: it's just you never know what opportunities will ever arise, as we've seen. So we just keep our ears to the ground, our eyes peeled, and see what kinds of things we can provide our residents to continue making this a great place for them.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. So, our traditional last question on the podcast: if you got to be the GovLove DJ and you could pick the exit music for this episode, what song would you pick?
Well, Ben, I've had a great time talking with you today, and I think it feels good. It feels like we just stole something. So I'm going to say "Been Caught Stealing" by Jane's Addiction.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that's a great pick. Our producer will get that queued up. And that ends our episode today. Jackie, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. We really appreciate you kind of sharing your experience, your expertise, and chatting today.
Thanks so much, Ben. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. And for our listeners, GovLove is brought to you by engaging local government leaders. And the best way to support GovLove is to go become an ELGL member. You can reach us online at elgl.org/GovLove or on Twitter at the handle @GovLovePodcast. And you should subscribe to GovLove. That's the best way to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you're already subscribed, the other best thing you can do is to share an episode you love with a friend or a colleague. Help us spread the word that GovLove is the go-to place for local government stories. And with that, thank you for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.